Welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Advice, thoughts, and stories from a married couple on cybersecurity, technology, and life in general. Now here are your hosts, Didi and Lital.
Hello and welcome to the Didi and Lital Show, and welcome 2024. It's a new bright year.
Yes,
How's
it
it
is.
going?
Well, it's starting with snow. At least
Not yet.
Not yet, but it will start with snow.
It's
But
promised. Let's see.
Let's see if it will be snow.
Yeah.
It is.
It has been extremely mild.
It has been
winter
extreme.
so far.
Yes. Producer Dave, where are you on the Bill Belichick getting canned on Black Monday? Not getting canned on Black Monday.
Would you have canned him by now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I would have canned him after Germany. Germany was such a bad game.
I think if they can him, then they can't get anything for him if he goes someplace else, right? Isn't that the
I think
deal?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I've gone back and forth on this so many times. He brought us so much joy over the years, but he looks like a walking corpse and just a cloud of negativity. So,
Yes.
are you available to coach, Didi? Because your no-nonsense approach could be what this team needs.
No. Not.
He will stay as a commentator.
I'll stay as a commentator. Also, most people don't understand being a football head coach is a serious hard job.
And you don't know anything about coaching.
That does.
It doesn't stop you from
does-
doing stuff. But that's,
yes,
I
but-
think that's the one job you shouldn't take.
Yes, exactly.
But we are back into normalcy. The year
Yes.
started better
Yes.
a little bit.
Although, because of how the year started, this is driving me towards our discussion topic of security theater, because we flew to meet my mom.
Yeah, we
Speaking-
already talked about that in a couple of episodes, I think.
Speaking of old people with a lot of negativity, we went to meet my mom in LA, so I encountered the TSA twice, especially the one back from LA that decided to give Ron an anal probe for no good reasons besides him being Ron. Then we had the mortgage thing, which is the dumbest process I've ever seen. And that started to make me think of how much security theater we have in our lives. And I wanted to talk about, is it valuable, not valuable? Let's start with that.
Let's
So-
start with defining security theater
Yes,
and give
let's-
some examples
Yes.
to those that don't know the term. But I think many of our listeners do know the term, but let's start with that.
Yes. So from my perspective, security theater is doing something that everybody knows has no value in security whatsoever, and you go through the motions just to pretend as if there's security.
Example,
Example. the
when
law-
you fly.
No, let's start with the easiest one.
You want to talk about TSA or you want to talk
No,
about
I want
flights?
to. I want to start with the easiest one.
Okay.
The lock on your house. That's complete security theater. You know why it's security theater?
Because you can break the glass and come from the window.
Exactly. Most of our houses have tons of windows, and you just throw a chair through the door and you're in. So that's really secure. So the lock on your door is very much security theater. It's meant to kind of protect you, or at least mentally protect you from the guy next door that doesn't have a locked door. So let's say there's a junkie walking through your house, your neighborhood. He goes door by door, tries to come in. And
Those that by mistake will
Yes.
try to get in, the confused,
the confused elderly.
yeah.
And you see that people practice it like all the time. Like your mom, every time your mom visits our house, she locks the door, like double bolts it. The
I mean,
top-
how many times you go to bed and ask me, did you lock the door? And I was like, whatever.
Yes.
And you're like, no,
Yeah,
I go
yeah.
back and you go back and lock the door.
But that's
Because it gives you, and I think that is the point. We'll talk about it. It's psychological safety.
yes, it gives you
It's a sense of security which we all need, especially in certain circumstances. For example, flying, which people associate with some kind of risk, They've seen movies about, flight hijacking and, all kinds of terror attacks, and they want to know they're safe. So you need to give them a sense of psychological safety, even if it's false. One of the movies that I like most is Fight Club. I think it's legendary. I think people don't appreciate how much it shows the, human basic needs to have animal instincts as well as this sense of security. And I love this part in the beginning when he tells about how this whole thing of, the air mask, the oxygen mask coming in and, the whole charade of like what will happen when if the plane needs to be evacuated. How many times can you really evacuate a plane that is crashing? Actually, there was a case, I think this week, of a plane, maybe in Tokyo, in Japan, I don't know,
in Tokyo,
that went in flame and they managed to rescue everyone.
But that was on the ground.
That was on the ground after landing.
And also Sully was able to land it on the Hudson. And
that's legendary.
Yes.
But that's rare. But still, we want to know that, the airline thought about this unique circumstances and they have a plan. No, they don't. There is no plan. But put the air masks on. So
same as the TSA that one guy 20 years ago tried to blow us with his boots, and since then everybody's taking off their shoes.
Oh, the liquid. The liquids.
Oh, the liquids. I think the liquids. I think the liquids is actually politics. It's the guys that sell us about a Diet Coke for $5 on one side and for $2 on the other side, trying to screw us over because it's TSA approved, so you buy the Diet Coke on the inside.
Yeah, it might be that it's like the tax-free shops on the other side that don't want to change it. I mean, it's nowhere in the world other than in the U.S.
Yes.
So,
No.
Yeah. In Israel, you can put whatever drinks you want through. Nobody checks the drinks.
Well, that actually
only U.S.
When you talk about Israel and the U.S. in terms of the flight security, that brings us to another topic, which is related to security theater, is the difference between security theater, and that's another part of the politics of uncomfort. Because a lot of times, let's talk about now in our business of security theater and not. So
Cybersecurity.
Hey, guys, before you move along, do you want to see a little bit of the clip that you're referring to?
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
That's like my favorite two actors.
Illusion of safety.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know why they put oxygen masks on planes?
So you can breathe.
Oxygen gets you high. In a catastrophic emergency, you're taking giant panic breaths. Suddenly you become euphoric, docile. You accept your fate. It's all right here. Emergency water landing 600 miles an hour. Blank faces, calm as Hindu cows.
That's an interesting theory. What do you do?
What do you mean?
Well,
Absolutely.
Illusion of safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's all about the psychology
And-
of accepting the bad fate when it happens.
And by the way,
Unfortunately.
Lital really loves Edward Norton. She's a big fan.
I'd marry him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you remember, we had Stravish over. And when we were talking about compliance, he said that think of the fact that most compliance processes today at most security companies is basically the equivalent of giving your New Year resolution. And that's why I was starting to think about this. Because, hey, New Year resolutions.
I have no New Year resolution.
Exactly. So people basically saying, you know what, let's submit our New Year resolutions, which is what people submit into the SOC too, versus what they actually do in their actual processes and their actual metrics. So it is a security theater. Everybody makes money. People bring in auditors. Everybody goes through the motions and the processes.
Red taping, legal. You need to show what you're doing.
And
the same of us applying for a mortgage.
Yes. Well, that
We'll get to it in a second.
We'll get to that in a second. But if that's when we're going to talk about profiling. When you look at the hierarchy of the process, it's a little bit like the joke with the credit card and my mom. So my mom always said that she pays with credit card as she does her spending. because the credit company is happy, the vendor is happy. The only person that's not happy, she's happy when she gets the stuff, and if she buys stuff at the grandkids, she's happy and the grandkids are happy. The only person that's not happy is my dad when he gets the credit card bill. So for one unhappy person, should we stop all that's happiness and celebration? Now, when we talk about this, now it's the same thing. When you do the security theater for compliance, you get the auditor companies are happy, they make money. The executive are happy because they have a CYA. They say, hey, we run our compliance. We even use the framework. If there's an advisor company, they even make more money. If people do, you have more jobs because people work on the compliance stuff. Right now, I have basically 2 engineers that are up to their eyeballs doing SOC 2. So everybody's happy. And of course, when you try to sell something,
It runs the economy.
It runs the economy. So it makes everybody feel happy. So that's, at least from my perspective, the bad part of the security.
Why is it bad? Everybody's happy. Then jobs created and people, you keep them busy.
But they're still my dad. And eventually a hacker will come in and all you'll do is put a patch on a patch. Like Sarbanes-Oxley was supposed to stop one form of fraud and there's another one. So you create more bulk and you stop dynamic movement. But there is also important value for security property, for security theater. As we mentioned, it also does drive the economy and it does allow people to not get stuck. And that's the important part. So there's...
What do you mean by not get stuck?
So think of why airport security was established to begin with. In the 70s, there was all the terror on the airlines.
Yep.
People refused to fly. After 9/11, people refused to fly. And you need to create some level of the government telling people, don't worry.
We're on it.
We're on it.
We're doing something.
We're taking care of this. And they try and try and try and try. And the more effort you put into this, there's also an element of fake it till you make it. I'll give you an example of one of the things that came into compliance that actually is a good thing, that is a fake it till you make it. As you know, as somebody that used to work in EDR, one of the most important things is vulnerability management. Vulnerability management right now is so ingrained in us, in our security. It is part of the theater, but it's actually an important thing. The other one is security education. We had Gabi here. Everybody goes through the motion of security education. And occasionally, I'm not saying that it's like the blind hand finds a nut or something like that. I'm really bad with the American metaphors. So blind squirrel finds a nut. That's that. So it's not that. I've seen this when Gabi's company was doing this. I saw that people were starting to ask me questions. So going through the motions of the theater sometimes teaches you what to do. So think of that waterborne landing, Sully landing on the Hudson. The fact that everybody saw that video allowed people to go off the plane safely. So this is part of the importance of security theater. It does solve several problems, and it does allow you to have a process to improve your security.
Yeah, it's like I think during the pandemic there was this Swiss cheese metaphor that you have few layers, and because you align them one to each other, even if you have holes, because you have a bunch of them, they will block most at the end of the day. I think in the pandemic they talked about, you have vaccination and you have mask and you have 6 feet and all those kind of things. And even though each one of them is not really good and not perfect, all of them together are kind of helping. So you're saying, if I get you right, that, well, this whole thing is, at the end of the day, not super effective. The fact that we have a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of here and there, the whole patch together is kind of a blanket that is probably helpful. Plus, it does put some awareness into those areas that are risky. My problem is that at the same time, it may not just put awareness, it might put false sense of security. And this is what I'm worried about.
Yes.
You know, the story of Israel before October 7th building a great electronic fence and saying, you know, it will shoot whoever touches it. And, you know, next thing, they just blow off the cameras and, you know, open the fence.
Yeah.
So it gave a false sense of safety and security that made Israel not put the, you know, armed vehicles to actually sit at the border and secure it. And that's what I'm always worried about. The psychological safety is important. We cannot go throughout our days with anxiety about everything. Otherwise, as you said, it's a stop. We're not going to fly.
Like transacting online. If
I'm not going to put my credit card online. It's going to be immediately hacked or any of that. We have to go on. Economy needs to fly.
Yes.
But when are we crossing this line of, you know, feeling too safe when this is not the truth?
So this is where, and I think when you touched on the fence, and this is where I wanted to actually use the mortgage situation the same way. It's when a situation is unpleasant and people don't want to touch the unpleasantness. And because of that, they build security theater. Security theater is important, very much like if we were dealing with going to a doctor and we know that they have a playbook or security has a playbook, these things are important. But a lot of times they replace the uncomfortable conversations. When we talk about traveling out of Israel, Israel is shameless about profiling. If you or I try to get out, somebody basically waves their hand and we go through. Somebody else gets an anal probe. When you do the mortgage, they're afraid to build profiles. So what happens?
It's probably illegal. That's the reason.
I don't know if it's illegal. I don't know if it's not illegal. I don't know what's the reasons or not. But what they do is they do go through that Swiss cheese process that you just mentioned. So when you and I got our first mortgage, we were here in the U.S. for less than a year. They had no data about us. And all our answers was, hey, we don't have that data. So they just took a look at our W-2s and said, oh, okay, we're good.
All we had at the time is salary.
All the time.
Basically.
Exactly. Now we have...
And it passed through immediately.
And it passed through immediately because that was the only data point.
I don't even know if we managed to submit tax return. Maybe
we
it was
did.
one.
We had to.
No, it was just
2012. We had to
might have been just before that.
No. 2012.
Okay,
Trust
so we
me.
had one tax return
Exactly.
in the U.S. at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to my point is they had no data, so they didn't bug us. We basically were. They knew nothing. They did nothing, and we went through. Right now, we have millions of data points, so they keep asking about every data point under the sun, but it's actually just make your life miserable when they actually need to get to a very simple number, a math-based number of debt to income ratio. And if they don't have the systems and track the numbers, and comes back to the security organizations and uncomfortable conversations, this is where the lack of data and the lack of understanding of your systems and your processes causes that false sense of security, because you're basically performing your theater on one door. Think of this as like, in many cases, you make all the passengers go through a very, very tight regulation of inspection, but then the employees that work on the ground get no inspection, and basically you let everybody come in.
Which happens all the time. Like I wonder sometimes how much they actually check over time also. Like maybe they do one screening to get somebody to work at an airport, but do they check them over time? Maybe they change. Maybe now they're in touch with, a terrorist group. I don't know.
Exactly. So the inability to manage data effectively because of insensitivities. So we were talking about this, that a lot of times privacy rules prevent us from actually building the right algorithms. Other things prevent us from doing the right methodologies. So we end up, because we are uncomfortable dealing with the real problem, then we build security theater.
To deal with the things we can deal with. The easy stuff.
To deal with the easy stuff and not deal with the hard problems.
Right. So just to be very explicit so people understand what we're talking about, it's really hard to look at a person, going through security check-in in the airport and ask who the person is, what he's doing in his free time.
Or profiling ahead of time, basically.
Exactly. I mean, it's, again, probably illegal because of privacy issues. So all you do is, okay, I'm going to let him take his shoes off and try to see if he has a water bottle in his backpack. So,
or it's expensive to polygraph all your employees once a year, and you rather outsource the cleaning to.
Oh, you do it once they're in. I mean, you could have a great employee once he's in, but 10 years in, maybe now he's shady and doing other stuff. But
or he's in debt.
Or he's in debt. What's the equivalent for cybersecurity?
So the equivalent to cybersecurity first is the privacy regulations, which makes people always afraid to implement. The other thing that people are not willing to do is to think holistically of your user experience. So what happens is people just rather pile on things. If you remember, right now, I was just so happy over the break because I think CVS asked me for a passkey, and I think 3 of the banking applications asked me for a passkey. I was so happy because right now, finally, we're actually doing security the right way, and somebody's invested in actually doing security the right way. But most places, it's expensive to replace the front door. It's expensive to build the applications right. It's hard to actually do a good SDLC training. Good security development lifecycle training is expensive. So most of the time, people would rather you see a video for 15 minutes, click OK, and hope that you actually learn something.
It's not just the training. It's actually, reviewing it, enforcing it, reviewing it over time. I mean,
and there's the
application security is probably one of the hardest areas.
So it's not one of the hardest areas. It's just it's a challenging thing. So there's companies like Sneak out there, and use them, and think of what is you need to go back to the mortgage example. One of the things that nobody does because it's so hard. It's a hard question to ask. Is what is your risk to value offering? And this is something that when we were building Ort, we did all the time. Oleg, Anton, me, Oded used to talk on those Sunday calls that we have and say, if we implement this control, how will it impact development, impact velocity, impact value? And what amount of risk are we taking on? What sort of data do we have? And what sort of, but for that, you need to have informed employees and be willing to have, very much like in the mortgage example, as somebody that's willing to take a risk for your user experience because they say that the risk is low, and somebody that's willing to say, and a lot of this has to come from knowledge and understanding, that this risk is high and we shouldn't accept it. So, for example, if you build something that talks to a cloud-based application, make sure things like their keys are in a safe place. There's things that you need to know, and you need to understand how the architecture of your application works. And that's hard. It's also understanding your employees, running the background checks. It's unpleasant to run background checks on employees. People kind of wiggle and I know these people from, no, do the unpleasant thing. So it's unpleasantness. It's hard not in terms of money. It's hard in terms of knowledge. So very much like producer Dave was joking with us before, can I replace Bill Belichick? I don't know if a quarterback spiral is good. I hear some of the experts say the O-line stands this way or that. I don't know this. It's not that I don't even know how to do this. So security, I know. But hiring somebody that actually knows is hard. Measuring if this person knows is hard. So people feel both uncomfortable to collect information that they feel uncomfortable collecting because it's a hard question to have. And developing the right way is hard. And hiring the right developers is hard. So they rather put a tape on top of it of security theater.
It makes me go to my next question, and I have an idea how to answer it. And I'll see if you agree with me. How can we build the security theater, which we agree is important in a way, that it would actually become less of a theater and become more of helping with security? I thought about you talking about this unpleasant part.
Yes.
And when I'm thinking about how, to get clear or TSA pre-approved or global entry or whatever, they actually make you go through this unpleasantness, give up some of your privacy rights and, let them check you up, do the whole process, background check you, review you, and you need to undergo this and renew every 5 years or so. So you need to undergo it again and again. And under this, I think security theater, you consenting to getting through less of a theater and understanding it, you give away some of your rights, your privacy, and so for the pleasantness of a faster queue. So I wonder if there are ways to build in this kind of
Incentive program?
Maybe. Or other ways. Or if you would be the one to redesign the security theater, how can you make it less of a theater and more of an actual security?
So let's start with real security. You know what? Let's actually start with the airport. But it's actually relevant to both security and the airport and in the not airport. First, understand your risk to your reward value. Understand what's your risk factor. Understand what is acceptable risk and establish that. Then hire people that know UX, because the user experience, both in the airport, and if you look at Clear, for example, you chose Clear, that's a good example. They really thought of the user experience.
Yeah.
You feel like a VIP.
Because somebody escorts you,
Exactly.
gets you in. You don't need to do the whole thing when it doesn't work. They tell you step closer, step further, blah,
Exactly.
blah, blah.
You feel special.
So you paid for this and you feel special.
And you
Yeah.
feel special. So the user experience is a really important part, because there was an article about Clear, the fact that now the lines in Clear are actually longer than in the
in the
in
TSA only, and
many
sometimes even longer than the regular lines.
Yeah, but people stand in there because they want to feel special. So think of the user experience. Make the user experience aligned with your security goals. If you do that, think of the login experience. The fact
I
that-
think this is where, and I highly recommend going to our old episode with Gabi.
Yeah.
He really understood the
Yes.
user experience of security training,
Yes.
making it fun, funny, great videos, shareable videos. He drives user experience into something that is mundane. Nobody likes security training.
Yes. So, for example, if we and this applies everywhere. The user experience applies everywhere. It applies in the mortgage, in TSA, in your security audits, in your security training, in your security development. If the user experience is good, people are willing to undergo more. And the more that people are willing to undergo, as long as you did the first analysis of the risk to value ratio, now you understand where you want to go.
Oh yeah, I can give the example of the. I would completely redesign a UI for the mortgage thing. That every time they ask us for one of those explanation of our properties in Tel Aviv and whatever, they will show us how we move in the process
Yes.
and
By the way,
give an
Rocket-
explanation of why it's needed, not just a black box.
Yep.
Only if they had this little of a system telling us this is stage, I don't know, 1 out of 25, or you progress 25% in the process, or anything other than not feeling like a black box of us throwing spaghetti at the wall. That would have been nice.
Actually, I would show the risk metrics. I would do more. I would not where we are in the process, but actually show the impact of the data towards our improved risk. Think of we had a whole bunch of people that was discussing Kenna scores. Being able to show a risk score value, and by the way, a lot of the risk score companies are completely security theater. They make up security numbers. I know I've made up a shitload of.
But people love this.
But people love them.
You're down from 80% insecure to now 25.
Exactly.
Whatever that means.
But making this actually a reality, now this is good. So this is kind of making this just requires you to design your UX, understand your actual risks, and actually move towards reducing your risk for real. And that's about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of these topics that, they're never going to be perfect. And I think we always complain, but the message that we don't want to kill security theater because we think it's needed.
Yes.
Otherwise, everything that happens, people will stop. I really love the reality that, a decade ago when, more than a decade, then when I started working in security, there was all this FUD and fear-mongering around breaches. And nowadays, we know it's inevitable. I prefer today's reality because the fear-mongering wasn't helpful.
Yep.
When we used to say, "Oh, you will be breached,"
Then people stop doing business.
Yeah, and like then when we saw Target getting breached, Home Depot getting breached, and people thought, "Oh, the business gonna collapse. They're gonna go out of business." Well, they haven't. The sun comes out. The world doesn't collapse. We just need to get better, and the implications, unfortunately. But yes, sad stuff happens in the world, and we still wake up the day after and keep on going. So I think that's healthier and that's important. And if we need to put some facade in place for people to feel that they can go on with their lives, we have to. But I do want everyone to think how we can actually use the theater to drive security and not just the
Not the other way around.
facade.
Not just the facade.
And for sure, not to just give a false sense of security when actually all you have is a house of cards that will completely break the minute you're here. So I would love people to think about whatever they did this year in the SOC 2, in the compliance, in the things. Think how much of it was, and just say to yourself, you don't need to talk with anyone, but say to yourself, how much is BS? And it's fine. You put some BS in it, okay. But how much did you put in it that you can, wholeheartedly say, yes, it gives me visibility to things I should do better, and use it. Be frank with yourself. Try to use those things, not just for the security theater, but for actual improvement. What is your ending thoughts?
My ending thoughts are that our lives are security theater. And I'll give you my...
You know that you're going to eventually die.
First, my dad used to say that life is a sexually transmitted disease with 100% mortality. That was my dad's nice Jewish optimism. And from my perspective, there's another thing of inevitable. So the nerds in that like Marvel, like our kids, will tell you that Thanos said, "I'm inevitable," and very much like Thanos is inevitable, the asteroid that's going to wipe out everybody here is inevitable. The question is it coming now? Is it coming next year? Is it coming tomorrow? So think about the fact that we're flying on a mud ball in a very insane speed that has a thin layer of rock on top of a mountain of lava that can blow up any given time and be hit by another rock at any given time. So
You sound like Ron, like a son.
I am not. So I am happy because life is inevitable, but so is death. So security theater on the biggest risks, very much like in the speech song, that will hit you is not everything you worry about. It's something that will hit you on an idle Tuesday that you never saw before. So don't worry.
Be happy.
Be happy.
All right. With that, I think we can come to a conclusion of today's episode. I hope you liked it. If you like our show, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. Share it with your friends. If you want to be on the show, reach out to Didi or to myself. Have another great week. See you next week.
See you next week.